Hi, this is Tiffany. Could someone speak just so I know that I'm connected to the audio?
Hi,
I was
Tiffany.
thinking the same thing. Good morning, Tiffany.
Thank you. It was really quiet.
I think we're waiting for a chair.
Hey there, this is Randy Selleck from DRPT. Can anybody hear me out there?
Yes, good morning, Randy. It's Sharon.
Oh, hey Sharon. Yeah, sorry, I'm just having all kinds of technical difficulties this morning, so I wanted to make sure people can hear my voice. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think Chet said they're just waiting for the chair, Nora, to join.
Okay, perfect.
Good morning, everybody. This is Kelly LeDuc, Vice Chair. Nora didn't contact me about not being able to participate today, but I can go ahead and start the meeting if you want.
Thank you, Kelly.
Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, morning, everybody. I guess this is I'm just gonna wing it. So I can see that there's plenty of people here. So if we want to do the roll call.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, I can go ahead and do that for us.
Let's start with,
Okay.
we have a statement regarding virtual meetings that was included in the agenda packet. We don't need to read that in full because it was distributed ahead of time. If there's anyone on the call or attending the meeting today that has questions about that, this would be the time to raise those questions. Otherwise, we can move forward as the Vice Chair suggested. Okay, thank you.
Doesn't look like, all right, thank you.
I'll go ahead and do the roll call for attendance. Dr. Ashland, Ms. Amos. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Walker.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Here.
Mr. Flagg.
Here.
Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Here.
Mr. Yor. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Here.
Mr. Chardine.
Here.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark. Mr. Bridewell.
Here.
Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Sparks. GRTC Transit System, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Ride Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
Richmond Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Ms. Simmons. And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Herman.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and I can certify that we have a quorum.
Thank you, Nicole. Start with item 1, consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda. Does anyone have any changes or amendments? Okay, hearing none, do we need to vote on that, the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair, we don't. You can just approve the agenda by acclamation.
Okay, sounds good. If everyone's okay with that. We'll move to item 2, approval of the November 10th TAC action meeting minutes. Does anyone have any amendments or changes to the minutes? Okay, I don't see any. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Kelly, this is Barb Smith. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay,
This is
thanks,
Liz.
Barb.
Sorry.
Thanks, Barb. No problem. Okay, motion and second to approve the minutes from November 10th. Nicole, will you take the roll, please?
Madam Vice Chair, we don't need a roll call for the minutes. We can ask for a verbal vote, please.
Sounds like a plan. Everyone okay with the minutes? If not, speak up. All right, good. And we'll move to item 3. Any public comments received?
We're not aware of any. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Number 4, I definitely don't have a report, but I will talk to Nora after and see if everything's okay with her. I'm assuming so. Let's move to item 5, Chet, RRTPO update.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
One second. I'll upload or share my screen. Okay, so the first item in the staff report is the current work efforts update. There are a lot of great things going on, and we're talking about a few of those this morning. So I'm going to leave the suspense for Barb when we talk about the bike ped plan update. We are trying to figure out next steps in development of the fall line. There's a lot of irons in the fire right now, and staff is planning to talk to our partners at Bike Walk RVA and sports backers about kind of the soft side of marketing and awareness and public engagement to get more interest in the fall line. On the other side of that, there are a handful of smart scale applications that are in the hopper with VDOT for segments of the fall line trail. So that, along with the work that's being done by our staff on the trolley line connector, trolley line trail, I think paints a good picture for the coming year, and hopefully some great news on making sure that this project moves along and starts getting completed. Our work groups are still meeting. Our active transportation work group has been a little bit dormant over the past few months, but is continuing to work behind the scenes and meet as needed to continue the work of the bike ped community and making sure that we are moving forward as needed on our work inside the TPO. Our public transportation work group is prepared to support GRTC, most notably in the development of the regional public transportation plan that is called for under the CBTA legislation, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. So that project is underway, and there is a consultant selected, and we're looking forward to supporting them as a steering committee in the next few months as they embark on their work. The next item in the agenda packet was an update from the Community Transportation Advisory Committee. And you can see that at the November 19th meeting, there was an update from Noah Goodall from the Virginia Transportation Research Council on connected and autonomous vehicles. This meeting was recorded, so if anyone wants to go back and hear that talk, it was very informative and talks a lot about the current work and next steps for CAVs in the Commonwealth. We also got an update from Sulab, our planning manager for Connect RVA 2045, on the work that's being done, as well as a number of other things, including complete streets guidance, the I-95 RMT Commerce Corridor Access Study, and there's a great story map that was developed in partnership with the port, and that is on our website, and I believe you can link to it from the agenda packet itself. The last item, I believe, the next item in the staff report is a copy of a letter dated November 16th regarding VDOT's upcoming actions relative to the 6-year transportation improvement program. I believe everyone got it separately, but I just wanted to raise this at this point in case there were any questions from the TAC regarding this update. And I'm sure that Ms. McAdory would be happy to address any questions that anyone might have. The final item in the staff report is the CBTA update. The authority itself met last week, December 4th, for its regular meeting in December. Their next meeting is January 29th. The authority continues to work on kind of the foundational efforts in setting itself up for success. And we now have an agreed upon memorandum of agreement with VDOT for revenue transfers, so that all of the revenues collected through the various taxing schemes now has a path to be deposited in CBTA accounts. The next step is to actually get CBTA accounts. So we're working with finance directors from across the region to make sure that we have sound financial policies in place for the authority, and following the right steps to get bank accounts established, look at financial advisor services and other types of things. So that is still underway and moving forward. We also have a scope of work for the transit governance report that is one of the other steps required under the CBTA legislation. And that is scheduled to be sent out ASAP to the consultant bench that DRPT has and soliciting proposals for that scope of work. The plan is for the entire report to be completed by the end of this fiscal year and submitted back to the authority itself, as well as the Governor and General Assembly as required by the code. I believe that I saw that our chair has joined us. I'd be happy to turn it back over and take any questions if there's anyone that has anything pressing regarding the TPO update.
Thank you, Chet. Are there any questions? Well, I apologize for being late. Thank you to Kelly for stepping in. I really appreciate that. So the next item on the agenda, item number 6, is a passenger rail update from DRPT. I think Randy Selleck is going to provide that to us.
Yes, hi, thanks, Nora. This is Randy Selleck, DRPT. It's been a while since I've been back, now back virtually to the TPO. It's nice to be able to present to you all. Jennifer Mitchell did basically the same presentation last week for the board, and it probably did a much better job. So I won't try to fill her footsteps, but I'll hopefully can convey the information at least that she did. Next slide, please. So Virginia is kind of at the crossroads of major rail networks here in Virginia. We have major north, south, and east-west corridors. Both CSX and Norfolk Southern operate trackage in Virginia. Of course, there's a service to the port in Hampton Roads. Up near DC, you have the Long Bridge, which I'm sure everybody has heard lots and lots about. It's a major bottleneck that we are working to fix, and I'll provide more information on that later in the presentation. Next slide. Virginia's passenger rail network, as I said before, very extensive routes between Richmond, DC. We have 5 state-supported trains, Amtrak trains, that are serving Richmond currently. We have 1 route that extends to Roanoke. We have 2 trains a day out of those 5 that serve Newport News, and 2 trains per day that serve Norfolk. Next slide, please. The I-95 rail corridor, well, I should say the I-95 corridor in general is one of the most congested corridors in the country. And as you all, I'm sure, know, multiple modes running along that corridor. Currently, VDOT started a study, the I-95 corridor improvement study late last year that looked at I-95 in particular, and determined that in order to add a new lane between the Beltway and Spotsylvania, it would cost around $12 billion to build, and within 10 years, that capacity would be completely used up and you'd be back to where you started. So it just kind of underscores the importance of multimodal improvements in the corridor. And currently VRE is probably the biggest carrier passenger capacity in the corridor. And of course, Amtrak service as well to and from Richmond. Next slide, please. And so here we get into the Transforming Rail in Virginia initiative, which sort of is the Commonwealth's attempt to try to change the paradigm with rail in Virginia. Currently, all passenger rail service runs on either CSX or Norfolk Southern, privately owned lines, and so that means that we need to negotiate with those freight services when we want to add new passenger service. And of course, we have conflicts between freight and passenger rail. So Transforming Rail in Virginia will be trying to solve those issues by actually purchasing right away and trackage, and then additionally building new track, and I'll get more into that later in the presentation in detail. And that will help us to be able to expand passenger capacity without that process of going back. You know, previously we would build infrastructure for the freight railroads in order to gain passenger capacity, but then the ownership of those would go to the freight railroads after they were built. So this is a way for us to get that additional passenger capacity, but also avoid some of the freight and passenger conflicts we've had in the past, and then also be able to own it and add the assets ourselves you know, rather than having them owned by the class ones. Next slide, please. So there's really kind of three legs to the stool of transforming rail in Virginia. You have right-of-way track acquisition, infrastructure upgrades, and then the additional service that's involved in the initiative. The right-of-way acquisition is significant, about 350 miles of right-of-way, 39 miles of track, and over 170 miles of track also on the east to west Buckingham Branch corridor between Doswell and Clifton Forge. And that plays into the Commonwealth Corridor study. I'll explain a little bit more of that later in the presentation. And also includes the 75 miles of currently abandoned track between Petersburg and Ridgeway, North Carolina, which will play into additional higher speed service in the future between Richmond and Raleigh. As far as infrastructure, you're looking at the construction of the second Long Bridge. Talk more about that. Fourth track in Arlington and Alexandria, which is currently underway. A third track from Franconia to Lorton, and also additional bypasses and sidings. The additional service aspect would include Amtrak and VRE, and I'll also get into that in a little bit more detail later in the presentation. Next slide, please. Focusing on the Long Bridge, we expect it to be 1.9, close to $2 billion project. It's a 1.5 mile corridor, and what we would be doing is building a new two-track bridge north of the existing bridge. It also includes a bike ped bridge that would be in between a little bit further north and would connect both sides of the river there in DC. And really it's the Long Bridge proper plus 5 other additional spans. So it's quite a lot of work, quite an engineering challenge given the constraints. And Virginia will own that new two-track passenger bridge and the trackage that goes along with that. Next slide, please. Here's a little bit more detail on the Amtrak service plan. We're looking at 6 additional trips or round trip trains out to 2030. And the way that kind of breaks down, once the negotiations with CSX close, which should be early next year, we would be adding an additional round trip train down to, I think that's to Newport News, and Newport News or Norfolk, and that would be, like I said, early next year. That would kick off. Phase 1, which would be should be complete by 2026, would add 2 new round trips to Richmond, and also onward to Newport News. Phase 2, which would be in the 2030 timeframe, which would include 3 new round trips to Richmond. So as you can see, as we move towards the 2030 horizon year, additional service really builds, and then actually beyond that, there'll be the ability once the new Long Bridge, and I should add, the phase 2 2030 is with the completion of the new Long Bridge. And so it really will, between the Long Bridge and the ability to have dedicated passenger tracks that the Commonwealth will be purchasing, it really will provide that additional capacity that's needed to have quite an expansion of passenger service. Next slide, please. Looking on the VRE side, you'll be gaining 4 additional round-trip VRE trains on the Manassas line, and then more relevant to the I-95 corridor, 5 additional round-trip VRE trains by that 2030 date. And you can see again how it builds. You know, we have an additional VRE train on the Fredericksburg line with the sort of finalization of the negotiations. Then in 2026, in that first phase, 2 additional trains. And then by 2030, another 2 additional trains. And then beyond 2030, you know, expansion, expected continued expansion beyond that as well, with that new capacity that the Long Bridge and the dedicated passenger tracks will provide. And also will include late night and weekend service, which VRE currently does not have. Next slide, please. Economic benefits of the Long Bridge. This is something that I was involved in. This, you know, the Fuller Institute did a study this is about a year ago now, and it's just kind of staggering when you enumerate it. Nearly $3 billion in direct construction impacts to Virginia. You know, 110 million in outlay, which generates 166 million to the regional economy in Northern Virginia. So basically that would be, you know, $66 million net. And the additional 6 billion contribution annually to the DC region by 2040 from rail commuters. And that's a significant impact from a fiscal standpoint to the Northern Virginia. And really, you know, is kind of looking at the future and commuting patterns. A surprising number of people use existing commuter service over the Long Bridge to and from DC, both from the north and from the south, you know, both commuting from Northern Virginia north and vice versa. And it really, the economic benefits are expected to be significant. Next slide, please. The current status of transforming rail in Virginia. We received the record of decision for Long Bridge September of this year. So that was a huge milestone for us. Working through some regulatory findings, the petition to the STB for the deal. DRPT and CSX negotiating, we're continuing to negotiate the agreements. We're finalizing the funding agreement with Amtrak. And then VRE operating agreements and being able to assign these assets to VPRA in the future as well. And then we currently have procurement out for the Long Bridge PE phase to further that project. The total program of projects for transforming rail in Virginia is estimated to be around 3.7 billion. So, you know, a large investment, but we believe a large payoff. And Amtrak will be contributing nearly $1 billion to the deal as well. And we'll also use other state and federal sources. Regional funding from the Nova region, VRE as well will be contributing to the funding. Next slide, please. Now on to the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. It was an entity created by the General Assembly this last session. And, you know, basically it's a way for, you know, for us to be able to provide a mechanism to hold these new assets that are going to be owned by Virginia, both the right of way and the trackage, et cetera, and then also to operate these new and expanded services. So it will be able to grant others the ability to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain rail facilities. It can also be a direct recipient of US DOT grants, and will have the ability to use eminent domain for construction, which is our important powers to be able to really realize the full scope of transforming rail. It also, well, I should say it's sort of built on a similar pattern to the Virginia Port Authority. And so that's sort of the closest, I guess, similar entity if you're looking for something to compare it to. It'll own the rail assets, and then it does have a 15-member board. I believe we've had, I could be wrong about this, at least we had the initial meeting. I think we may have had 2 meetings of the board at this point. So it's starting to get up and running, but a lot of work left to get it staffed. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Next slide, please. This graphic just gives you an idea of how things will be split out. Of course, right now, DRPT has the responsibility for all the passenger and freight rail planning and programming. The planning and programming, construction, et cetera, will really shift mostly to VPRA. The statewide planning part of the work will stay with DRPT, and that's in order to make sure that those things work well with initiatives like the VTrans planning updates and things of that sort. Maintaining its role as a state agency in those planning efforts. The rail authority. Let's see. Well, let's see. I'll just next slide, please, and I'll get into the details. So rail at DRPT in the future. On the freight side, we have the Commonwealth Rail Fund, which will be about $11 million annually. That's a freight rail program and statewide planning under that initiative. The Short Line Railway Preservation Fund, which helps provide access to Class 1 network for short lines, will be around $8 million annually. That will continue at DRPT. And then the Rail Industrial Access Program, which creates grants for businesses to be able to access rail infrastructure, will also continue at DRPT. Next slide, please. DRPT Freight Rail Enhancement Program is sort of a new program that's been created at DRPT now. We're still developing guidance for that. It'll be a competitive process with applications, based on the project benefits, readiness, concurrence with state priorities like VTrans. And there'll also be a project ranking and scoring process that will be involved in those. And included eligible projects would be railways, railroad equipment, rolling stock, right-of-way, rail facilities, et cetera. That will be also on the freight side at DRPT. Next slide, please. On the planning side, as I said, DRPT will continue with some of these larger statewide initiatives, including some regional planning, as in regional, nationwide regional, not state regional necessarily, through things like the Southeast Corridor Rail Commission, implementing the Southeast Rail Plan, which is a FRA initiative, and then the Virginia North Carolina Rail Compact, which is moving toward being able to provide higher speed rail along the Southeast Corridor. At the state level, we have the FRA compliant statewide rail plan that we actually are just now starting to get to work on the next update. The last one was in 2017. The VTrans steering committee and the freight element for that, of course, freight advisory committee, and then MPO coordination and working with organizations such as the RRTPO will continue with DRPT. Next slide, please. Specific DRPT planning activities underway. On the corridor side, we have DC to RVA, the service development plan based on DC to RVA is continuing to undergo updates, especially as we have transforming rail in Virginia coming online. So that's something that we continue to work on. The Commonwealth Corridor study, which is looking at that corridor that's going to be purchased between Doswell and Charlottesville, and looking at the possibility of future passenger service on that line. That study will be kicking off this year. And then I-81, looking at that corridor, both for freight and passenger rail improvements and helping to boost the multimodal component of that corridor as well. Looking at stations, we have Staples Mill, PE underway, which I'll go into more detail about that. Charlottesville, Bedford, Culpeper, and then Ettrick, where actually the state is doing some updates to Ettrick, plan for the near-term future and for platform upgrades, lighting, parking lot improvements as well. Next slide, please. Looking a little bit closer at Staples Mill, the plan is bringing previous 10% concept level plans to full 30% PE. So those concept plans were from the DC to RVA study. The new facility should be able to handle 6 additional round trips that Transforming Rail in Virginia proposes, and bringing the number of daily trains up to, in the near term, up to 30 by that 2030 timeframe. So helping to enable that additional service. The new Staple Mill design will feature more than 35,000 square feet of building space. And it's really an exciting project. We've been working closely with Amtrak, FRA, Henrico County, and the TPO, as well as CSX and VDOT on the project, and looking forward to continue to move that project forward. Next slide, please. Looking at Main Street Station, we have improvements that are needed for 4 additional round trips to Main Street. The first phase, which should be in the 2022 timeframe, would be an additional new round trip to Main Street Station. That train that currently originates from Staples Mill would instead originate from Main Street. The improvements would require a new turning and storage facility. Also, a location of turning and storage facilities, we're still trying to figure out where the best location for those facilities would be. Looking at some possible locations at Fulton Yard or out near the Richmond International Airport. Phase B would be 23 to 2026 timeframe, which would include 3 new round trips to Main Street Station. Norfolk trains routed on the S line through the Main Street Station rather than the current route for Norfolk trains along the A line. So again, bringing some of those Staples Mill trains through Richmond that currently take that western A line track through Richmond. Improvements would include PTC for the line, platform, bridge, and other spot improvements between Centralia and Acca Yard. Next slide, please. And then rail connections to North Carolina. Currently, we have 4 daily round trip trains to North Carolina. The travel time is currently around 3 hours and 36 minutes. Long term, the hope is to double the number of trains to North Carolina from 4 to 8. Reduce the Richmond to Raleigh travel time by over 80 minutes, which will be that higher speed service, and that would be again leveraging that currently abandoned right of way that's as part of the Transforming Rail in Virginia purchase. Adding North Carolina service to Main Street Station, and then the record of decision for Richmond to Raleigh study recommended rerouting trains to CSXT's inactive S line. So basically, beefing up the S line there south of Main Street Station to allow for rail service, whereas currently a lot of that service is over to the west on the A line. Next slide, please. And that is it for the presentation proper. Happy to try to field any questions from the TAC, and those I can't answer, I will certainly try to get you an answer.
Randy, that was excellent. Thank you so much. Here in Ashland, we're quite interested in what's going on, so we really appreciate this update. Does anyone have any questions for Randy or any comments on the presentation? Go ahead, Chet. You're muted.
Thank you. I am interested in the Richmond to Raleigh section.
Sure.
Now that the right of way is in place, like what's the next step? Is it track reconstruction? Is it political? Is it funding? What's the next steps in that process?
All of the above. Yeah, really, I mean, I think the first thing that we'll need to focus on the right of way. While the majority of it is still intact, there are pieces here and there where over time, because it hasn't been utilized, and there's little chunks that have been privately sold off, and so it'll be some work to basically go back and just acquire those little tiny slivers and pieces that have disappeared over the years, to reassemble them so that the right of way is completely intact, and then at that point, it'll be then on to doing the work that's necessary to replace the track, bring the track beds back up to snuff, and yeah, I mean it's going to take a significant investment funding wise, which of course I assume that North Carolina will be part of the picture there as well, since it extends into North Carolina. So this is sort of the higher speed service, and the utilization of that line is definitely a little bit further off in the future, but it's a huge step towards that. It's really the only viable way to pursue higher speed service. And when I say higher speed, we're looking at probably Richmond to Raleigh study contemplated like 110 mile per hour service, but it would definitely make a big dent in the current travel time, and so yeah, it's a big undertaking, but I think it's very exciting at the same time. So
Yeah, thanks. I guess one follow up is the rail compact active, or is that something that's kind of been waiting for a kickstart?
No, the compact is currently active. I can't, because I am not intimately involved in that. I can't tell you how active. I think it's been a little while since there's been a meeting. Typically they would have an annual meeting of the compact. That would be Virginia and North Carolina representatives, and I can't tell you if that's happened in 2020, but it's active. And I think it's waiting for, it was waiting for something like this to really help push things along. And I know North Carolina too has also been working behind the scenes on their own service development plan. So there's things that have happened recently that should help to make the compacts work more fruitful and help to move things along.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone else
You're
have a
welcome.
question? Okay. I guess we'll move on. Again, thank you for that update.
Oh, thank you.
And I got to pull my agenda back up here. The next item is item number 7, the fiscal year 21 to 24 TIP amendments. Mr. Parsons, are you going to go over that for us?
Yes, thank you. I put it on the screen. There are a handful of TIP amendments to bring before you today. These are requests from VDOT to amend the FY 21-24 Transportation Improvement Program to add these 11 new projects. And they are shown on the screen. They're all CIP related, ranging from changeable message signs to towing programs, to advanced work zone technology, to quarter tech improvements program. These are all, none of these have obligations. The resolution that's presented for TAC review and recommendation to the policy board is shown on the screen. And I bring that to you for any questions staff recommends action as shown.
Thank you, Chet. I know Jen has been reaching out to representatives, so I appreciate his work on this as well. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Or do we have a motion to recommend approval of these TIP amendments?
This is
This
Joe
is
Biden.
Liz. Go ahead.
You, Liz.
This is Liz with VDOT. I will make a motion.
This is Joe Vidunas. I'll second.
So we have a motion by Liz McAdory and a second by Joe Vidunas to recommend approval of the proposed TIP amendments for fiscal year 21 to 24. Do I have any other questions or comments? Not hearing it. Mueller, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Aye.
New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
That concludes the roll call for item 7.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. Item number 8 is the Richmond Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan update. Ms. Jaycox is going to go over this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Nicole, yes, thank you. Now let her man the PowerPoint for me. It's good to be back with you today. Your last update at the TAC level was on June the 9th of this year. Phil, I think, shared with you about the bike ped plan as well as complete streets at that time. And since that time, we've had 3 steering committee meetings of the bike ped planning group, which is made up of many of you, as well as advocates for bike ped in the region. We've had a very robust discussion among all of the committee members, and been collecting data and information, having individual meetings with the localities and with other stakeholders throughout that time. And we're going to be following this meeting with another bike ped steering committee meeting. So in order to not be redundant, we're just trying to give you a very broad sketch of the framework for the bike ped plan. You can go to the next slide, Nicole. So this is kind of where we are. Our hope is to lead the way for the LRTP with the final drafting of the bike ped plan. This is an update of the 2004 plan, so it's long been needed. We will have the draft and final plan ready in the spring, is our hope. And we're trying to also be very much a part of contributing to needs and objectives, as well as specific projects to the LRTP process. Next slide. And of course, one of the first steps that we've worked with the steering committee on is establishing a vision, goals, objectives. And we'll share those with you briefly today, because we have had a lot of discussion on both the vision and the goals. Objectives, performance measures are still in process, and we'll be discussing those more with the steering committee today, particularly performance measures. But when we think of performance measures in the bike ped plan, we're talking about overall global performance measures that will be measured over time as we continue to look at our ability to provide a more complete, fully multimodal network throughout the region. We're not looking on a project by project basis like the LRTP. So we'll have that discussion at 10:30 today, more so about performance measures. Next slide. This is the vision statement that has been part of our discussion at the last two steering committee meetings, and we're hoping to get endorsement today from the group. Essentially, the first sentence is the one, takeaway. The Richmond region provides mobility for people of all ages and abilities through a safe, continuous, recognizable, and intuitive pedestrian and bicycle network. And then we talk about how we hope to achieve that. Safety being number one. Also making sure that we have consideration for bike ped and all regional and local comprehensive and related plans, including at a local level, particularly implementing ordinances and guidelines to equitably enhance the quality of life. And those are the performance measures we're talking about. How do we measure that? Strengthen local economies and preserve the natural environment. Next slide. I'm just going to breeze through the guiding principles that really help us determine how we are going to accomplish this mission and what our major guidance is. Of course, safety has been number one in a lot of our survey work that we've done for LRTP, as well as bike ped. Lessen the higher roadway injury and fatality rates for certain for bike ped, and with a focus on bike ped. To ensure that choice among all travel options, we're looking at transportation and not just recreational options for bike ped, so that you can actually get to destinations, you can get to work, you can go to school by, on bike or by foot. And then we want to prioritize the completion of a regional network. This is making more fully utilizing our existing roadway network, as well as natural features, respecting our development patterns, and also having a special interest in those that are really dependent on alternative to the passenger vehicle transportation. We want to make last mile transit access a priority, and that's kind of a catchphrase, last mile, meaning focused on stops and stations, particularly, and crossing of streets, where there is transit, and looking more at centers of activity to provide better pedestrian access. Incorporating in context-sensitive design to all facilities. We've talked about the rural, suburban, urban kind of mix of land use patterns that we have, and how do we make standardized bike ped improvements that can suit all conditions and where they are, and build equity, of course, into serving our historically disregarded communities. We have an equity environmental justice tool that we're using through LRTP that we want to employ, along with other health factors in our bike ped planning efforts. Next slide. And then this leads us to 5 central goals. We've had a lot of discussion about this number one safety goal, and it's been concluded by the steering committee that our goal ultimately is to have 0 traffic-related pedestrian and cyclist fatalities. That is central to everyone's, I think, focus, and we will accomplish that only if we keep our eye on it and are focused on the number of crashes and trying to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries. And we're certainly tracking that data, and it's shared throughout the region. Next slide. Environmental, land use, and health. Decrease the number of days with an air quality index above 50 as measured by the EPA. And in this area, we have quite a bit more work to do when we talk about health factors. We are working very closely with LRTP on resiliency, but I think we're well on our way to identifying what can make a more resilient network with some of the data that we've been collecting. The health factors, improving work-life balance. Our primary focus is looking for continuity of data that is tracked from year to year and make sure we have a reliable source for that data. We're not going to be able to develop it on our own. We're going to be dependent on the CDC or the Virginia Department of Health or other Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, where I was looking at yesterday. There are any number of sources that will be focused on. Next slide. And equity and accessibility. Our focus, and I still have it in here as the level of comfort, but we really are talking about the level of stress. We have mapped the roadway system, and we'll share this more with the steering committee, looking on a scale of 1 to 4, with a level of stress of 1 being it's the safest. There are either there are bike ped facilities already there. The traffic volume is relatively low on these roadways. There and the right of way is conducive to improved access, and it just makes it safer for all to use those roadways, all the way to 4, where the more experienced riders would have a better level of stress. And of course, we're not talking about using the entire road system. We're talking about those that tend to be the lower speed, less volume roadway system throughout the region. And then just increasing the access to jobs and community services with transit, cognizant of the transit service that's available throughout the region as well. Number 4, economic development. We know that for example, the Virginia Capitol Trail has yielded a great economic turnaround in many businesses that are located and associated with the trail, and we feel like this is a very positive way to establish a sense of place and an attraction for talent to the region. So we recognize that and would like to be able to come up with some way to track that that return on investment. Goal number 5 is mobility and resiliency. Of course, trying to retain everything in the state of good repair. This includes, looking at opportunities for replacement of bridges that may, now serve as barriers for complete bike ped access. And then just also the constant challenge of keeping bikeways clear of debris and just those standards that we hope to be able to promote throughout the region and maintain sidewalks, et cetera. We've gotten a lot of interest in helping to determine sidewalk priorities, particularly in the South Side of Richmond area. Chesterfield has worked on a sidewalk prioritization tool that we want to take a closer look at for the region. Next slide. So bring that all together. This is in draft form. We have everything that we've just talked about in one spreadsheet, addressing the guiding principles, the vision, goals, objectives, and then the plan performance measures that are still very much in draft form that can help us assess on a every year, 5-year, 10-year basis, how are we doing in providing a complete, safe network. And you can go to the next slide. That's just more of what we just talked about, talking in terms of, again, performance measures. And what we have is we have a very interactive GIS map that will be talking more specifically to the steering committee, we continue to build this map, and we've tried to come up with a way of organizing better all the different projects. I think I counted yesterday some 60 projects. They're of varying scales. So we have, small local type projects, which actually ultimately may contribute to a larger regional trail. And that's what we're trying to look at, those compatibilities for local projects to become part of a regional network. We have, projects that are proposed that are beyond the region. All of them serve different functions, some currently just a neighborhood function or a connector between neighborhoods. And then we have the major spines, the fall line being a spine as the Virginia Capitol Trail. And then we hope to categorize them more in time bands, 5-year, 5-6-year CIP-based kind of time bands, so we can establish priorities. We have many different types of facilities, ranging, from shared use path to the sidewalks. And then status, we want to really focus on not only an inventory of existing projects, but also some that we may not have thought about that are in a concept stage. And we can start to help define those routes better with the inventory of level of stress, and what are some of the obstacles that need to be removed to make some of those routes more viable. Next slide. And then I'm not going to read all of this. I just wanted to give you an idea of the organization and the extent of projects we have that, either ongoing or in the thought stage or in process. All of these bulleted here contribute to the fall line, some in various forms of development and funding. Applications have been, on a number of them have been submitted. And the next slide will give you the other two major spines in the region, or touching the region, the Virginia Capitol Trail, of course, with potential to expand by different spurs, often to the populations of that are served by the Cap Trail. The Appomattox River Trail, working very closely with FOLAR on those opportunities to our south, ways to connect and really respect the East Coast Greenway and other conceptual and very real kinds of systems that have been designated. Next slide. We have a lot of locally identified projects, just ranging from a state of good repair, replacement or improvement of a couple of interstate bridges in Henrico, to ongoing projects that in the Cannon Creek Greenway and potential to extend from that, which has been established. Joint efforts, we're trying to definitely respect the multi-jurisdictional aspect of many projects, such as along Hull Street. There's been big improvements on the city side, and connecting into Chesterfield would be the next stage. And then longer term projects by the localities, some of which are acknowledged in their planning efforts, like the James River Park system and its extension beyond that, their footprint. Scott's Addition Greenway on the Richmond 300, the James River Branch Trail, which is an abandoned rail line, which is acknowledged in the Richmond 300 and applied for smart scale, and all sorts of other connections to Powhatan State Park, Pocahontas State Park. And the next slide will give us longer term regional projects, some of these beyond the region. The Three Notch Trail has been under discussion lately with extending to Charlottesville, and where would that come in to the western portion of our region. James River Heritage Trail, another one. So that's kind of a sum up, quick summary of where we are. we certainly invite your comment at any time, and it could be through our steering committee or even, with an email to Phil is really the driver of this whole thing. I'm just here to support him. And so we would welcome input today or beyond today. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate that update. And yes, thank you to Phil for his great work on this. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay. It's hard seeing faces here, but I think.
Yeah, everybody's blank.
Again, Barbara.
Certainly.
So the next item on the agenda is the transportation agency updates. And as you all may recall, I did ask staff to add ride finders and GRTC to this list. So we'll start with DRPT with Tiffany Dubinsky.
Thank you, Nora. I believe that a copy of our agency update was included. Thank you so much. So I'll cover these items really quickly. Starting with DRPT's 6-year improvement program. I think I also mentioned this in our last meeting that the draft SIP has been posted for comment, and it's available at that link on our website. As always, I wanted to note that this is a focus on FY21 allocations for projects that are needed, such as operating assistance and critical capital projects. So as such, this is only for a single year of allocations, does not include our typical 5-year capital or operating plan. We anticipate that these items will then be included in FY22 SIP. We will hopefully get approval on our draft SIP at the CTB meeting tomorrow. And once that has been approved, we'll be able to move forward on executing contracts. In the interim, we did open our FY22 application cycle on December 1st. I know I had been talking a lot about all the various grant programs and related virtual webinars. If you had missed any of those webinars and you would like to see it, I believe there are recordings on DRPT's website. I also want to note here that specifically for the Richmond region, we do have our TRIP program that is currently open for a request for information or interest related to either the regional routes or the Fare Free program. The deadline for any of the larger urban areas that are eligible for any of those programs to submit anything is by December 15th. There was an email blast that just was sent out this morning, but if no one got that and you're interested in finding more information, I'd be glad to forward that to staff to send out. Related to the Virginia Breeze, I had asked about if there is still interest about hearing how our intercity bus service is doing. So related to the Capital Connector, as I mentioned in previous meetings, service started in August. In particular, we're starting to see there's steady growth in ridership. We saw nearly 400 passengers in November. We are seeing that with the new wave of COVID that there are some new challenges coming in, but right around now, we're still operating with still the same social distancing guidelines. If you want more information or if you like more detailed information about the ridership and number of buses, anything about the stop level data, I'm also available to give that to anyone who's interested. I won't go too much into the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority because Mr. Selleck did an excellent job covering that. But just for anyone's information, the next meeting is scheduled for December 14th. All the information can be found on DRPT's website at that link there. And it is, I believe, also streamed or recorded through staff. So if you're interested in kind of tracking what's going on with the Rail Authority, you can do so there. And with that, I'm done with my update, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Tiffany? Okay, we're moving on to GRTC. I think Adrienne Torres is here with us.
Yes, good morning. Just to continue what Chet mentioned earlier about the Regional Public Transportation Plan, we are moving along with that. We have selected a consultant, and we hope to be working with TAC through the Public Transportation Working Group in the beginning of the year to have the first of hopefully many meetings. Also, GRTC's board meeting is set for December 15th, if anyone wants to tune in. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Next, we have Ride Finders. I think John O'Keefe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had 3 quick updates. We had one of our staff members, Jakima Taylor, who was nominated for and won the Association for Commuter Transportation's 40 Under 40 Award. It's an award that recognizes, people who are 40 under 40 within the TDM agencies. So she did win that. Also wanted to let you know that Ride Finders, again, won another ACT award for Best Online Marketing and Social Media Marketing Campaign for Celebrate Earth Day Every Day for the Clean Air campaign. So that was another award that we just got about 2 weeks ago. So just wanted to make you all aware of that, and also remind everybody of the Ride Finders Advisory Board meeting tomorrow on the 10th at 9:30 a.m. virtually. I know a lot of you all are members of that RAB meeting, and just wanted to make you all aware of that. And those were the updates that I had.
Thank you, John. Congratulations on both of those.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Ride Finders? Liz, did you have anything? Oh, you're next. I was like, saw your face pop up. Okay.
Oh, yeah, no.
So next on our list, Liz McAdory for VDOT. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. Okay, I'll try to be brief. There was a CTB member meeting, not a member, a CTB meeting in November. There was a COVID update presentation on the financial plan and 6-year improvement program, very similar, kind of similar path that DRPT is on. And there was also just a status update on Smart Scale Round 4 presentation to the CTB. Both those presentations are online. If you're interested in them, let me know and I can get Chet the link. Let's see, the next meeting, this is a change from last meeting. There wasn't going to be a December meeting, but there now is. Actually, there was going to be a December meeting. There were going to be 2 different dates. Now they've combined the workshop and the action meeting to December 9th at 9 a.m. It's going to be virtual. Smart Scale, we're still plugging along at the district, trying to wrap up validation in the next week or so. We are going to be presenting, OIPE is going to be presenting the list of potentially screened out projects, or those projects that are at risk of being screened out, to the CTB in December. No action will be taken in December. All the action will be taken in January. And then they're also, when they go back in January, they're hoping to have a scoring scenario, or at least a funding recommendation that's not written in stone. It could be pushed to February. As of now, we're still told January. I'll keep you guys up to date if there's any changes. SIP development, we talked about it last month. There was a revised FY21 budget. Draft went to the CTB. It'll go to them. The draft went in November. The final will go in December. Same with the official revenue estimate for FY22 will go out to the CTB in December. And then the development of the FY22 SIP, which is the next 6-year improvement program, will be on the normal schedule. We'll start that early next year and shoot for a spring approval. Interstate studies, they're all pretty much on schedule. As we last mentioned, the I-64 public involvement just closed November 20th. We should be getting a presentation soon. I think we had over 1,500 responses. It was pretty big. No public meetings scheduled for those studies right now. As soon as there are any changes, if there's, we're waiting for draft recommendations for 95 or 295. So once we get those, we'll get that out to the group. And then upcoming public hearings or meetings, there is a public comment period open for Goochland County for some truck restrictions proposed on Route 608, which is Davis Mill Road. Chet, if you want to scroll down, there is I just attached the public notice. If you're interested, you can go to the VDOT website, or I can send you the link and let me know. I believe it's open until December 16th if you're interested in making comments. And that's the end of my update, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Liz. Does anyone have any questions for VDOT? I know they've continued to work really hard on the Smart Scale projects. Thank you to you and your.
I had a quick, sorry, Nora.
This
is Sharon Snidler. I had a quick question about SGR. I got an email that the SGR applications are due this Friday. I guess it hasn't been awarded from the last application round as well, or I guess I should reach out to an SGR contact?
Yeah, they would know a lot more about it. I mean, I know the reason it wasn't awarded last time was because we didn't do a new SIP. But I'm not sure what they're doing with that. It's federal money now as of 21. So who did you know who you got the email from? That's probably the best person to reach out to. But if not, let me know and I can get you a contact at the district.
Okay. Thank you, Liz.
Sure.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, moving along, the next item on our agenda are the future meeting topics. So we have Connect RVA 2045 updates in January, the TPO project prioritization process, an RSTP CMAQ update, Smart Scale update, continuing with the bike ped plan updates, continual CVTA updates, and the complete streets guidance and toolbox update to come in March. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to this list for future meetings? Okay, not hearing any. So I have to go back up to the top of my agenda. So the next item on the agenda is TAC member comments. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share for the good of our group? No, I will mention here in the town of Ashland today, actually, we're starting our public meetings for our comprehensive plan update. So that'll be an exciting, long, lengthy process. Okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for January 12th. And if I don't hear any other inquiries, we will adjourn the meeting. Okay, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks,
Happy
Nora.
holidays, everybody.
Thank you so much, Nora.